Nanette Warburton, also based in Johannesburg, is joining us today. Nanette is an ex-theatre matron or unit manager and has great experience in the theatre arena. She then moved on to a position in procurement for one of the private healthcare groups and has relatively recently joined SafMed. Thank you, Nanette, for assisting us today. My name's Xana Jardine. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Head of Education for SafMed. I have now been with the company for 10 years, and I'm very grateful for all the experiences and things I've been exposed to and what all I've been able to learn over the last couple of years. My background is also that of a theatre matron. I have a master's degree in nursing sciences with my speciality area on decontamination sciences. SafMed prides itself in its educational offerings and has been offering education to healthcare workers and nurses for a number of years now. In fact, since the beginning of the company 30 years ago. And now this year we've launched our digital courses series. The one being the CSSDE Foundation course that we're holding that out as a big surprise for you. When that becomes available, which will be quite soon, you'll have the ability to do our CSSD Foundation course online instead of attending it in the classroom setting. Doesn't mean to say we won't teach it in the classroom setting going forward, but it now gives us the opportunity to have both options available. Released this week. If you've not received an email about this, please do drop us an email, xana@safmed.co.za, and we can then easily send you some information about our Express e-learning concept. So Express e-learning is bite-sized learning. You will receive a one-page PDF document, and you can then do some self-study. The first one is about managing instruments that we use in eyes, so decontaminating eye instruments specifically. Then you can go online and write the Express e-learning test, and very soon we will email you a certificate of completion. Today, of course, is the webinar that you're attending. We're hosting a series of webinars at the moment, focusing on managing instruments contaminated with pathogenic microorganisms. Today, we will focus on cleaning, and specifically manual cleaning and ultrasonic cleaning. Oh, I see I made a typo. There you have it. So the first thing we'll be talking about is manual cleaning as a whole, and not PPR. Today we will talk about PPE, similar to PPR, but not quite the same. The second part I want to cover today is a little bit about anxiety, resilience, and staff wellness. Then we're going to delve into the science of cleaning around the concept of Sinner's circle. We'll go into a bit more detail about ultrasonic cleaning, and we'll finish off with the concept of residual proteins. Always important to understand by definition what cleaning is, and the formal definition of cleaning is the removal of contamination from an item to the extent necessary for its further processing and its intended subsequent use. So the level to which we decontaminate a device, a medical device used on a patient, will depend on what it's going to be used for. If an item is going to have contact with blood, or an item is going to have contact with sterile areas of the body, it will need to be sterilized. If it's coming into contact with mucosa or skin, then the level of decontamination will vary and differ. When an item comes into the CSSD or we purchase a new item, we need to understand clearly what it is or how it is that item needs to be decontaminated. And one of the decisions we need to make is this item going to be cleaned manually, or will it be cleaned in some form of automated washer disinfector? And to make that decision, we need to firstly consult the manufacturer's instructions for use. Some instructions for use will specify that an item may need to be cleaned manually to begin with, and then it may need to go through an automated process to follow. The instructions for use are normally very, very detailed. They will specify if it is to be automated, they'll specify the type of automation, they'll specify the type of detergent. In manual cleaning, they also go into that much detail, and they specify types of detergent, things that won't work well with that device, and exactly what type of tools you need when you're manually decontaminating an item. We know that according to Alpha, and this paper was published already in 2010, which is quite some time ago, but that's how long this process has been ongoing for, is that ideally the optimal method for cleaning of all surgical instruments is that they should all be cleaned in an automated washer disinfector. We will cover the topic of washing devices or cleaning instruments in an automated washer disinfector in our next webinar. Automated cleaning, of course, is going to be way more thorough than manual cleaning, and it's more reproducible, and it's validated or verifiable. A human is a little less consistent. You know, one day we're a bit tired, so we spend 2 minutes cleaning something and we move along. Other days we've got a bit of time, we've had a good day out, we spend some more time, we are not consistent in the manner in which we clean. A washer disinfector always takes in the right amount of soap at the right time and does the process in a manner that is completely repeatable. However, some devices need manual cleaning. Some devices can't go into an automated washer disinfector, and some devices may need to be pre-cleaned before being placed in the automated washer disinfector. So it is very important that we understand manual cleaning. As you know, there is a series or process of steps that all devices need to go through. And those steps begin with cleaning, disinfection, inspection, packaging, sterilization, transportation, being used, stored somewhere, being used in the operating room, and being transported safely to the dirty side of the CSSD where we begin the cleaning process. But before we begin cleaning, of course, the most important aspect here is that we begin by donning our PPE. Donning of PPE is a very practical component, and it's something that we really and truly need to learn how to do. So for many years in the CSSD, we have been donning PPE, but we've been preparing ourselves for exposure to bloodborne pathogens. So we remember to put on our apron, and we remember to put on our gloves. We sort of sometimes remember to put on our goggles, but we're not really well versed in the correct process of donning, and certainly not in the process of doffing, of removing our PPE. And that's one of the most difficult areas where you can really contaminate yourself, is when you are removing your PPE. The World Health Organization has a lovely course on how to put on and remove your personal protective equipment. That is for free, that we've seen online. I think it's about 15 minutes long. I haven't personally done the course, but it certainly seems to be a very effective way of learning. There's also a very nice video that Mark Mendelsohn has posted that you can go and have a look at, that's really quite explanatory. And of course, the most important person to consult in your hospital setting on how to learn to put on and remove your PPE safely is your infection prevention sister. If you are unsure, please make sure that you have somebody come and teach you how to don and doff your PPE. Because we've been dealing with instruments now in our CSSD that are contaminated with horrible pathogens, and in this case including COVID-19 type stuff, we have to take our PPE methods and our PPE levels up a notch. Because now we're dealing with droplet infections, the potential of a little bit of aerolization of microorganisms at the time of cleaning, and we need to improve our PPE. And that, I think, has created a fair amount of anxiety amongst us. We now know for the first time, we see all the stuff on social media, healthcare workers all over the world are dying, including South Africans now, from COVID-19 because they are somehow or another becoming infected whilst they're nursing your patient, whilst they're managing the devices that are contaminated. And to be honest, I don't know about you, but I'm certainly getting a little bit nervous about this. And this does create a fair amount of anxiety. There are now quite a few published papers that deal with the fact that healthcare workers exposed to COVID-19 patients could end up with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I came across this article. I thought, well, I'm not an expert in this arena, but because I've studied management, I'm very focused on staff well-being, and it's a factor that's very important and close to my heart. So I started to look into the concept of PTSD, and I came across this very interesting article. And I'm going to run through what the pertinent points were in this particular article. The article focused on the fact that healthcare workers managing patients with COVID-19 have to take a huge amount of physical strain when you're wearing your PPE. It's quite difficult to breathe through an N95 mask for extended periods of time. It's difficult to undergo all of this isolation. We as a society, as well as nurses, have this huge physical isolation. We're a bit scared to hug our families. We're scared to have any physical contact at all. And of course, we're in lockdown, so it still remains a very difficult scenario. We have to be constantly aware and constantly vigilant, and it's really easy to drop your guard. You may be in the room with a member of your family and you think, oh, I'm safe now, but of course you may be the one who could potentially transmit disease to your own family. So our job is to be constantly aware and vigilant, and as nurses, people look up to us in the community. All of these factors create the most humongous amount of stress. What does this article say about managing our stress? How can we go about managing our stress and anxiety related to these difficult times? Some of them are obvious, some of them are things that we know, and some of them are not that easy to perhaps fulfill. The first point of call in the document spoke about avoid working around the clock. That's a bit tricky when you're a nurse and you get called in often. Avoid the excessive intake of caffeine. That's also a little tricky because I have to admit I live on caffeine. And of course, avoid the excessive intake of sugar. Be cautious around social media and news feeds. In the beginning of the outbreak, I spent a lot of time, almost every night, reading every article that I could find, looking at all the statistics, going online to look at what country had how many sick people and how many sick patients. And in fact, my colleague Nanette was the one person who said, Xana, really, you have to stop this. Stop sending me stuff at 10 o'clock at night. I don't want to know. I want to go to sleep now. And she actually recently was brave enough to say, you know what, I'm going to go off social media for a month. And she took a break off social media, and it was very effective. She found that it was really enlightening, and it helped reduce stress. And so therefore, we're saying it's quite important, and so does the article say, take a little bit of a time out. Of course, please don't feel guilty about not doing enough. We are nurses. We can do the best we can. We are also only human. There's the concept of self-care, taking regular breaks at work, and self-monitoring, trying to understand where you are at yourself. You know, as you go to bed at night, take stock. Oh my goodness, when last have I been to the dentist? Am I okay? Do I have a headache? Am I looking after myself? Self-care includes things like reading a book, connecting with your family. Of course, that's a bit tricky these days to do it in person, but I've managed to have quite a nice Zoom bra the other day. Do a video chat, catch up with your friends. Self-care is important. Acceptance, and acceptance is not something that's easy to do, but what is very true is we can't change our circumstances. It is what it is. The outbreak is here, but we can change how we manage and deal with our feelings and how we respond and react to this outbreak. We are managers, and as managers, we have to realize that not everybody of our staff that we look after has the same level of resilience. Because resilience is a whole concept unto itself, and resilience is something that we develop over time. Resilience is a combination of genetics, personal history, environment, and situational context. So if you have a set of circumstances, say you've got a very difficult doctor and you have a really bad list, and you decide to, at the end of the list, you're going to go have a one-on-one chat with the surgeon and you deal with this matter, and it's an effective way of dealing with the concept. You learn from that. if that experience happens again, you have the ability to apply what you've learned. So the more you do that, the more you build resilience. So resilience comes from our experiences. We also build resilience by trying to focus on the positive, yet having a rather realistic outlook. Try focusing our energies on the things that we can change, not the things that we can't change. Trying not to dwell on the negative and always looking for the positive in every situation. A few years ago, we went through a terrible spate of house break-ins, and in that time, it was almost every year, we had a break-in. And it was horrid, of course it was. But the nice thing was, I tell you, I got a brand new microwave every year. So I still have a very nice new, brand new microwave. So everything has a pro and a con. Okay, coming back to our decontamination of devices, and we spoke about the fact that first we have to don our PPE. This is a webinar we attended from the US. Nancy Tobin ran this particular webinar, and the title was COVID-19 Information for Sterile Processing Staff and What We Need to Know. And out of that, the main focus of the webinar was around the use of PPE on the dirty side of the CSSD. As you can see, this is a snippet from one of the slides from Nancy, and as she says, PPE is of course recommended, that we don it, that we doff it, and that we know how to do that correctly so that we don't contaminate ourselves. Nancy then referred to a published paper where they looked at healthcare personnel, and they attempted various PPE simulations to put on and remove their PPE, and in 80% of the cases, healthcare personnel contaminated themselves. We can't afford to do that with COVID-19, so please make sure that you're all well trained on the donning and doffing of your PPE. Another important aspect that came out of that publication was the fact that when you're cleaning manually, there's a great chance of splashing, and we can aerolize microorganisms, and we can aerolize COVID-19. So please be cautious around using the term they used, of course, is spray faucets. So I guess those, we would call them hoses. PPE in the South African context. So part of my job profile is to go around and audit various practices in various CSSDs. And often the advantage and disadvantage is that I see people in the real. Although sometimes when they see me coming, suddenly they go look into cupboards and shelves and find the goggles and eyewear that they haven't worn in a year, but they know they're there somewhere. And sometimes I catch people in the real setting. Often we end up wearing these kind of aprons, and aprons, of course, come in one size fits all, and we're not one size fits all. Often people wear very thin, disposable, non-sterile gloves, which are so short, and as a result, you never actually end up putting your hands deep into the water. And when we're washing, we should never be washing something outside of the water. We need to wash below the water level to prevent the aerolization of microorganisms. Nursing staff are complacent, and Leslie Devenish gave this lecture once about how when you go out you see a guy playing cricket, he goes out onto the field and he wears his big helmet, he's got his thigh pads on, he's got his arm pads on, he's got sturdy shoes, he's got the box covering his watsits, because he can see the big ball that's about to hit him. But in the CSSDs, the microorganisms, we can't see them. So as a result, we tend to become complacent, and that's really sad. But I do believe that for once, COVID-19 is teaching us that we really and truly must wear our PPE. Generally, we do have PPE available. I'm a little concerned about the types of aprons that we're wearing and the exposure of our forearms, and I do believe we need to up our game around that, and of course we do need to be wearing proper masks and face protection. One thing we do tend to be quite good with is our hepatitis B vaccinations, so please don't forget about those. This is a site visit I did 2 years ago to an off-site, so not in a hospital, a company that its entire job was about decontamination processing of SET, so an outsourced CSSD. In fact, I was going there to look at the tracking and tracing system that they installed and managed to get the permission to take a few pictures of the staff. So this is what the guys were wearing there. As you can see, it's an apron. disposable apron with longer, thicker nitrile gloves, non-sterile gloves, and always a face shield. They didn't tend to wear masks at that time. I'm very sure they would have upped their game as well. So in the CSSD, do we need to wear an N95 mask? Well, that depends on what it is you're doing. We covered PPE quite a bit previously, and of course you will be consulting with your IPC sister in your unit to define what levels of PPE you need for when you're decontaminating various instruments. But please make sure at the very least you've got on an apron, your arms are covered, you've got nitrile gloves that are of the correct length, you have on a mask, and you are wearing a face shield. Right, back to cleaning. Today I want to teach you the concept of sinus circle. And sinus circle is the scientific relationship between mechanical action, chemical action, time, and temperature. And those four factors are interrelated, and we need all four factors to be able to clean something effectively. If you have an automated washer disinfector and you decide that you want to now change the detergent in that automated washer disinfector, you will disturb the sinus circle interrelationship. It is very important that you stick to that relationship. You can't make one change without it affecting the other. It is possible that you think to yourself, well, let me put in a bit more soap or a little bit more chemistry so that I don't have to wash the item for so long. It's a very difficult and complex interrelationship, and all of these aspects play a part. What do we mean by temperature? Temperature is temperature of the water generally, and we need to take our detergent, mix it with the water. But for the detergent to be effective, the water temperature actually needs to be accurate. It's something we're not really good with in South Africa. If you look at this little picture on the right, it comes from that same site from the UK. There is a device in the basin that measures the water temperature. If you follow the little device, you'll see the display panel up against the wall. Detergent efficacy can be affected by the water temperature. If the water is too cold, it'll be less effective. If the water is too hot, and you're using an enzymatic-based detergent, the enzymes may be rendered ineffective. Another important aspect about water is the water quality, or the quality of the water itself, and what water contains, because naturally there are a variety of elements and minerals in water, including, of course, potentially microorganisms, copper, chlorine, carbonate, silicates, sulfates. They all exist in water, standard tap water. If you have a look at the image on the left, you'll see lots of white spots on instruments, white spots on the inside of an automated washer disinfector. And that's all from minerals in water. That's why the international guidelines recommend that the final rinse phase of instrument cleaning should actually be with demineralized water. Part of cleaning is that you need clean water, and how often do we end up changing the water detergent mix in the sink? Do we do it after one set? Do we do it after two sets? Do we do it after 3 instruments? And of course the guideline says change the water when it's dirty. But what is dirty? And of course, how dirty was the set that you put in there? If you're washing 2 eye instruments, perhaps it's not that dirty. If you're washing the instruments from a post-vaginal hysterectomy, they're bloody instruments, so then we need to change the water more often. If you have a look at the example of the murky water picture that we've taken over there, that is from a CSSD, I'll have you know. And in fact, you'll notice the foam on the top of the water. That's because in this particular context, the hospital was trying to use an Omo-based stuff, a laundry detergent, to wash their instruments with. Chemical action. So, sinus circle is chemical action, mechanical action, time, and temperature. Chemical action comes from the action from the detergent itself. Detergents can be classified into enzymatic, alkaline, or neutral detergents. And of course, all detergents have a purpose. We use that red soap at the hand wash station to clean our hands. We use sunlight soap to clean our dishes with. We will use perhaps Omo to wash our clothing. We will use carpet shampoo to clean a carpet, and we'll use towel cleaner to clean a towel. Every detergent has a purpose because its formulation is specific to what it is that it's designed to do. So it's very important not to use household chemicals. They're incredibly abrasive on surgical instruments. And I've seen that often. I've seen nurses with their bottles are handy come marching down the corridor because they need to clean something. They're determined to get something off a particular instrument. Please be very cautious. You cannot use household detergents in the hospital setting. We need to use proper detergents. Those detergents will contain various compounds. The base of it is water. Some of them will have acids, or some of them will contain enzymes. They'll have things like surfactants, corrosion inhibitors, or chelating agents. Chelating agents, for example, will keep the minerals in the water so that the minerals are then attracted to the elements in the water and that they don't end up on the instrument like we saw earlier with those white spots. Another important concept is that we dose the correct amount of detergent so that we have the correct water and detergent dilution. In order to achieve this, the first thing, of course, is that we tend to mark our sinks. The reason we mark our sinks is that we understand exactly how much water is in the sink so that we know, based on the manufacturer's instructions, what volume of detergent to add to that mix. Again, the site in the UK, you can see not a very pretty looking contraption, but a contraption that dosed the specific amount of detergent to make sure that the detergent mix was correct. In the South African setting, we often use a pump. Please be cautious that you're using the correct pump or the pump that came with that particular manufacturer's detergent, because they don't necessarily all dose the correct or the same amount. Dosing of detergent, you use too much detergent, aside from wasting money, will it rinse off correctly? If you use too little detergent, will you clean effectively? It's a very simplistic point, but a very important point to get cleaning efficacy. Mechanical action: rubbing, scrubbing, brushing, friction. And in order to achieve that, we need the right tools. And there are a variety of brushes out there. And I'm just hoping and praying that you've learned well enough not to use the wrong brush for the wrong job. Remember, your brushes, if you buy them from reputable companies, and they are the brushes that are designed to do the jobs and not just toothbrushes, they themselves need to be managed and can often be decontaminated or washed in an automated washer, disinfectant at the end of the day. Your cleaning tools themselves need to be A, in working condition, and B, kept clean. Also remember, at this point we want to use lint-free cloths wherever possible. Our technique of how we brush and clean is very important. Again, wearing our PPE, that we do not splash on our face. Wash your items below the waterline. And if you aren't wearing the correct gloves, you will never wash below the waterline. And then the last aspect of Center Circle to take into cognizance is the time. You need contact time with the detergent, with the water, with the mechanical action. If you think about it, if you go to the hairdresser, you've had your hair washed, and afterwards they apply the conditioner and then they massage your scalp, which is lovely because it helps for hair growth. But all of that massaging allows the conditioner time to do its job. So the chemicals need time to interact with the device for cleaning efficacy. So it's in a circle: chemical action, mechanical action, time, and temperature. So those are the 4 components that can help us make sure that we're cleaning our instruments correctly. If we apply those 4 aspects, we should hopefully come up with a clean instrument. To assist us in the cleaning process, there are devices called ultrasonic cleaners. We often call them ultrasonic baths because they have a stainless steel bath. There are four main components to an ultrasonic cleaner. There is an ultrasonic generator, an item called a transducer, the bath itself, and then of course water. If you have a look at the image in the top of the slide, that is an example of an ultrasonic cleaner. There is a bath component, and underneath it is a whole series of pumps and electrics. There's an item called the ultrasonic generator. The generator creates energy. The transducers, if you have a look at the picture at the bottom over there, those little items that look like speakers are called transducers. The transducers convert the energy into sound waves in the water. All of the sound waves in the water, and those of you that work in CCC have heard it often, you know, they create that like shh sound. The sound waves in the water create all those millions of little bubbles. The bubbles implode, which means they collapse inside of themselves. And as they implode, it creates a little bit of a suction. And that suction effect is what loosens all of the debris and creates the cleaning action. The process is called cavitation. Ultrasonic baths run at different hertzes. Not all machines have the same hertz. And some instructions for use will specify that an item needs to be cleaned in an ultrasonic cleaner at a specific hertz. So please don't just throw any old instrument into the ultrasonic cleaner. It's very important to have consulted the manufacturer's instructions to use to know that a particular device can or shouldn't or can go into an ultrasonic cleaner. Some items, some tiny laparoscopic items may loosen the screws too much and therefore shouldn't go in the ultrasonic cleaner. Other items are really well suited for going into an ultrasonic cleaner. This is a summary of an article from Infection Control Today from a PhD candidate who's well published in the area of decontamination sciences, who referenced to numerous papers, which I thought I'd use this summary because it was a little easier than going through all the individual papers on the efficacies and benefits of ultrasonic cleaning. And as you can see in this summary over here, and it's a direct quote from this article, that some of the studies demonstrate the effectiveness of ultrasonic cleaning in standardizing the cleaning process, removing dried serum, whole blood, and viruses from contaminated instruments. I find that ultrasonic cleaners are probably one of the most underused pieces of equipment in the CSSTs, and it makes me very sad when I come into a CSST and I see that the device is not well used. I have no way of advising how else to clean items like suctions that have got complex lumens in them. A Yankow sucker is a complex lumen. It's one of the items I included in my master's research. It runs at a different gauge inside of the device. It is incredibly difficult to get in there. No one-size brush fits in there. And the best method of cleaning items like that is with ultrasonic flush. So an ultrasonic bath, but the bath itself has the ability to squirt through an ultrasonic flush as well. Of course, if you're doing an eye instrument, you will not need or unlikely to be requiring an ultrasonic flush, and you want to be doing your eye instruments separate to your other general instruments, then you may be using a smaller bath type concept with maybe a 10-liter bath. Please, it is very important to look after your ultrasonic cleaner. With it will be a manual with a set of instructions, and those instructions will stipulate, for example, that the ultrasonic cleaner must be disinfected. Please do not leave water standing overnight in the bath. You will develop endotoxins. It's one of the causes of TAS, toxic anterior segment syndrome. Always make sure that at the end of the day you empty out the bath, you dry it out, you let it dry, and then follow the instructions for use for disinfection. Some manufacturers will say that it needs to be disinfected once a week. It'll specify to fill the bath with what product, how to manage it, how to rinse it afterwards. So please follow the instructions for use. When I took this photograph one day in a CSSD, I was particularly saddened. Those yellow and black items are really fungus, and fungus is terrible. I can't believe that a bath can look so sad. We alluded to some of the research that I've done before, and in that particular research, it was quite sad to notice a few things. For example, of the instruments and cleaning that I observed, of which there were over 300 instruments, in that regard, we used hand soap. Look at the picture on the top left. We used hand soap to wash our instruments with. Some people used alkaline detergents in their automated washers. Some use enzymatic in their manual cleaning. And others in their manual cleaning were using enzymatic cleaners and mixing in other detergents as well because they wanted to see foam. Because our household products foam, we like to use foam, and we see foam and we think foam means a good thing. But remember, in the medical setting, foam is not good. Proper detergents do not foam, especially when you're cleaning manually, so that you can see in the sink that you don't hurt yourself when you're trying to clean something because there's so much foam, you can't see what's going on. So medical grade detergents don't tend to foam. So please do not mix detergents. Often people would take the designated detergent that they were given and then mix in hand soap, the nice red one, to make foam. It's really, I don't understand. Do we rinse our instruments? No, we didn't do that very well. Did we mix the detergent and the water correctly? More than likely, no. It's really something we don't do well. Testing a device for residual proteins after cleaning it is one way to tell whether or not the device is clean or the device is still dirty. If there are proteins remaining on the device, it means the device is not clean. We've spoken about this research before, so this is South African based, which is why I like to make use of it. At the end of the cleaning procedure, as you heard, 300 or so instruments were tested for residual proteins. The instruments I used for my research were specifically needle holders because of the box joint, dithermy forceps because we tend to cake and stick proteins on them, vaginal spicula because they are forgotten about, laryngoscope blades, Yankow suckers, and in this research we used gastroscopes. It was phenomenal in the pilot study to see that 44% of the ready-to-use laryngoscope blades were positive for residual proteins. They honestly were not clean. On the right-hand side over there is an image of a swab that just came out of a Yankow sucker. Often when I was testing Yankow suckers, I could barely get the tip off, the rose tip off. And when I did get it off, this is the kind of debris that I would find in those devices because we don't clean them well enough. Yankow suckers are complex devices. We really and truly should be cleaning them properly. Okay, so today's session, we've managed to go a little bit quicker, I must say. We've spoken about manual cleaning and the importance of wearing PPE and the importance of wearing the correct level of PPE. We've delved into the anxiety that putting on that PPE actually creates for us. And we've spoken about the ability or the importance of developing resilience and looking after our own staff wellness and hoping that we have time to chat to somebody about any of those issues we could develop. Sinus circle we have covered. The importance of correct cleaning means that we need chemical action, we need time, we need mechanical action, we need the correct detergent. We've discussed ultrasonic cleaning and a few aspects around ultrasonic cleaning. And we've spoken about residual proteins and looking for whether or not our devices are clean or not by testing for residual proteins.